One of the most fascinating figures in the world of Greyhawk is Iggwilv the Witch Queen, also known as Tasha, also known as Natasha, also known as Hura. And I want to talk about her amazing life today on Greyhawk Grognard. So to kind of go with the my recent video on Tasha and Iggwilv and how they became the same character out of game, in the publication history, I thought it would be a fun exercise to try to go through her history in game, the in-universe history of Tasha. And this is it's an odd and difficult thing to do because there are so many disparate sources by so many disparate writers. There are, by definition, there are contradictions and things like that. So some of this is going to be guesswork. Some of this is going to have to be kind of intuited from other sources and stuff. So bear with me. I'm sure people are going to nitpick a few things here and there, and I get it. But with all this material out there, reconciling it into one timeline is a really difficult task. Added to that, the fact that she goes to different planes, and there could be time travel. There's all kinds of things that are going on. So just bear with me. I'm sure people will have take issue with a couple of things I say with the material like this. That's inevitable. So that said, here we go. So we know a little bit about her early life, mostly from Dragon numbers 336, where they talk about the Demonomicon, and there's a whole bunch of biographical information about her in there. But again, it's not the only source, so that this is going to go all over the place. She's probably born somewhere around 250 to 275, somewhere in there, and she is then she is either the direct daughter of, or she is adopted by Baba Yaga, the famous witch with the dancing hut with the chicken legs, from Slavic folklore, who's also in Greyhawk and the D&D multiverse in general. So eventually she is then apprenticed and gains a lot of magical knowledge from Baba Yaga. And she goes by the name of Natasha the Dark. Okay. Um, Later on, she leaves Baba Yaga and ends up going to Ket, which is right here, the city of Lapala, where she undertakes her first alias, and that is Hura. She is a fairly powerful magic user because of uh, all the knowledge she's gained from Baba Yaga. She takes over a wizard's tower, and she's got a kind of a bad reputation to begin with. And then she loots the tomb of the figure Dowd, who you know from a couple of magic items and so forth from the DM's guide. So she's driven out of Lapala. She's driven out of Ket, and eventually that happens around 300, 310, somewhere in there, because by 318, and we know that date specifically, she ends up in the city of Greyhawk, and she becomes a member of the Company of Seven. And the Company of Seven was a group of adventurers with Zagig Yaghreen, a lot of the Heward and a lot of the very, very famous early characters that we've heard of that are, by the time of the 576 era, they're quasi deities or demigods outright or whatever. So they end up being very, very powerful, and they have one of their first expeditions. It happens in 318, so we know at that point she's in Greyhawk as part of this, and here she's calling herself Tasha, and this we know. This comes from Expedition to the Ruins of Greyhawk. Uh, let's see. Let's see what this has to say. Da, ba, 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 ba. Uh, Never mind. So once she's in there, they uh, do a lot of adventuring. They get a lot of magical. She gets a lot of magical power, and eventually she tires of this and she wants to go out on her own. And that's when she and Zagig help imprison the demon lord Fraz Urblu. And she ends up, because he's built the castle dungeons and so forth, and that's part of the thing. There's demons imprisoned and things and such. So she's starting to get knowledge about imprisoning demons and so forth. And as part of her research, as she starts talking to Fraz Urblu, who's the demon prince of deception, you'd think there'd be a little warning, a little red light there, red flag. But anyway, so she gets a lot of information and lore from the demon lord. She ends up stealing a bunch of stuff from Zagig, including his own magic book. I think it's called the Book of Zig or something like that. Zix, maybe. And then she leaves Greyhawk and heads north into the Yattl Mountains. So this ties back to the Yattl Mountains video I did not too long ago as well. And that's when she starts calling herself um, uh, 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 Iggwilv. And that's when she really comes out as being that she's this flat out evil character. Um, and so she's got all this lore about the abyss, and she's got we don't really know what caused the break, other than I think her ambition just outgrew her being in the shadow of other characters like Zagig. That's my personal take on it. So she's up in the Yattl Mountains, and she starts to settle herself. She she takes over what's called the Caverns of Sajkanth, named after a wizard who I think in the later lore is retconned as a demon or something like that. But she goes into a mountain called Iggwilv's Horn, and that's where the caverns are nearby, and she begins her real magical researches and so forth in earnest. And that's when she starts writing the Demonomicon of Iggwilv, which uses as its base the book that she stole from Zagig, the Book of Zix or something. And and that's when she really starts coming into her own. She writes 6 volumes of this Demonomicon. Each one has the same spells, but each one also focuses on lore, on different demon lords. Um, and somewhere around 360 to 380 common year, she binds the demon lord Graz'zt. And this is a very definitive turning point in her career, having bound and enslaved the demon lord. He's obviously enraged, and she starts to convince him that I'll let you go if you help me do certain things, and so forth. And we get that from uh, Lost Caverns of Sajkant. And uh, and so he's a very, very clever demon lord, and he agrees. Doesn't really trust her, but he doesn't have much of a choice. So about within 20 years or so of that, her son Iuz is born, and and she has this son with Graz'zt, and presumably around the same time, her daughter Drelnza is also born, who ends up being the vampire that we see in Lost Caverns of Sajkan. And maybe 20 years after that, between 400 to 450, she really starts taking over, right? She takes over and conquers Perrinland for a whole decade. She's looking to expand her empire. She wants to take over Ket because she's still sore about being driven out of Lapala all those centuries ago, and she wants to crush them. Hi, everybody. Please help me keep Greyhawk alive by liking this video and subscribing. It really does help. You can also become a member of the channel or support me on Patreon and get early access to my videos, exclusive content, free or at-cost copies of my Greyheim Adventures modules, and more. Thanks, and now back to the show. And at the same time, she's also assisting her son Iuz in establishing his own empire. So he's off to the east in what will become the land known as Iuz, and he takes over a small, petty little lordling's territory by pretending to be his son, and then quickly slaying him. And then he starts taking over the surrounding regions, and so his empire is growing with the help of his mother's magical influence. So they're growing their empires together. But then After 10 years of ruling over Perrinland, Graz'zt notices that she's a little distracted, and he escapes his confinement. In the ensuing battle, he is slain. His material form is slain, and he's banished to the abyss for 100 years. But she and Iuz are also gravely wounded during this time. She is drained of powers and such, and she has to flee to another plane. Iuz, who was up to this point this handsome, powerful, human-looking being, is now riven in two. He's on the one hand, he's either got this visage of an old, wizened old man, or this red demonic form, and they'll never reconcile the two again. So that he's wounded in that way, and it just adds to his rage that he's always feeling. So at this point, because he doesn't have his mother's support to help him grow his empire kind of stalls where it is. This isn't, I don't want to go into too much detail about Iuz, but as everybody knows, he is later imprisoned under Castle Greyhawk, and then he escapes and starts to build his empire again. So, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. So between this time, between 480 and 570, she really doesn't show up anywhere. She's kind of licking her wounds in other planes. She's captured by Graz'zt at some point, and imprisoned by his major domo Voron or Varin, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Although she eventually does escape herself. She plays a role in the Greyhawk Wars. She's conflicting with the Circle of Eight, who keeps thwarting her. They send an expedition into the Isle of the Ape to get the Crook of Rao, which she was going to use to bring in an army. The Circle of Eight is also responsible for recovering her magical hoard and so forth. So she keeps butting heads with them, and they keep thwarting her plans to influence. But she was very influential in the Greyhawk Wars through her son. So she's kind of got this legacy thing going. And around the 580s and 590s, we get reports of her actual return, and she's once again butting heads with the Circle of Eight. Although she's probably at this point, this is from Expedition to the Ruins of Greyhawk, and we kind of infer some stuff in the timeline that they give here, that around the time of the adventure, which is 590s common year, then she's got her own schemes going, and she's interacting with different demon lords and building up her power again, and she's active across different planes, and she ends up being in, I believe, the Gray Wastes of Hades at the very end of the timeline, where she's rising again as a major power, but this time instead of on Oerth, she's a major power in the outer planes, especially the lower planes, because of all her knowledge. So that's where we end up in the timeline, in the chronology. So she goes from being the apprentice of Baba Yaga to first stretching her arms in Lapala, and then moving on to Greyhawk, stealing more magical knowledge, going back up to the Yaddle Mountains, and then her empire is overthrown, and she is cast out into the outer planes, although she still tries to meddle in the affairs on Oerth. So it's a fascinating timeline. She's interacting with all kinds of different history across the ages. She's certainly got the powers of a quasi deity at this point, maybe even a demigod. So she's one of the most powerful figures in the setting, and she's a great foil. But just be careful; you don't want to overuse her. But if she's use her sparingly, and she can be a really, really cool NPC villain for you. Maybe a villain behind a villain behind a villain, which is the best way to handle those things. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this one. Hope this opened up a few ideas for you about ways you can use her to spin off things in your own campaign. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will talk to you all later. Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.